You're listening to PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is your host, Tim Link, and I'm so glad you're joining us today. My special guest today is New York Times bestselling author Susan Wilson. Susan will be talking to us today about her recently released book, A Man of His Own. Every dog needs a man of his own, so that's going to be exciting. Get a dog factor in there, so we're always glad to hear that on Pet Life Radio. So another great book by Susan. We're interested in talking to her more detail about the book and her writing in general. So it's going to be a great episode. Everybody, so just hang tight. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be right back to talk to Susan Wilson after these messages. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
I'm not much of a reader, but I do wish I were more well-read.
There are so many great books coming out. I wish I could find a way to keep up.
Audible.com makes it easy to stay well-informed and catch up on your reading simply by listening. Audiobooks from Audible turn downtime into uptime. You'll be more productive and become well-read.
Now I'm able to catch up on all the great books I've been wanting to read.
With Audible, I feel smarter.
Pet Life Radio listeners, try Audible.com now and get your first 30 days of Audible Listener Gold membership plan free. And get a free audiobook. Choose from over 100,000 titles. To get this great deal, go to audibledeals.com. That's audibledeals.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is your host, Tim Link, and joining me now is author Susan Wilson. Susan, welcome to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Well, thank you so much, Tim. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, it's our pleasure. Congratulations on another great book, A Man of His Own. Can you tell us a little bit about the book, the storyline, and we'll take it from there.
Well, it's essentially, it could be construed as an historical novel in that the bulk of it takes place immediately before, during, and after World War II. What the key players are Rick Stanton, who is an up-and-coming baseball player with designs on finally making it into the major leagues, and his new bride, Francesca, and their dog, who is Pax. Pax is a dog that Rick found in an alleyway, and who was his, chief companion until Francesca. And along comes World War II. Rick goes off to war. Francesca is left with Pax, and they form a bond, but that bond is upset when she and Rick together decide that the best use of Pax is for him to become a war dog. And that circumstance introduces Pax to another human character, and that is Keller Nicholson, who is kind of had a tough life. He's a young man. He has been in reform school. He's been essentially made to be slave labor with a crusty old uncle who's put him to work, and he sees the war as a way of getting out of that. And whereas Rick sees it as an interruption in his plans, and Pax sees it as, what the heck is going on here? But Keller and Pax then form a bond. So we now have, basically 4 characters. One of them is Dog. And at the end of the war, it is time for Pax to come home, and Keller is absolutely crushed that he now has to give this dog back. The circumstance, however, is that Rick comes back from the war. Not only are his dreams shattered, but his body and his soul and his spirit, and he is struggling. And when Keller comes back with the dog, they invite him to stay on as an aide, and there becomes this sort of love triangle with 4 characters, and that is, Keller and Pax, and Francesca and Rick and Pax, and it just goes around and around. So that's sort of the essential part of the story.
Yeah, so a lot of dynamics there, a lot of twists and turns in this novel as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as a writer, how do you go about coming up with, writing this book? I mean, compared to your other books that you've done, how do you sit down and get this idea and frame it around events and people?
Well, I think the key thing is it took me about 3 tries to actually figure out what the story was that I wanted to tell. which is not unusual for writers. I think you often go in thinking, I'm going to write a story about X, Y, and Z, and you find out that actually the story you're writing about is about A, B, and C. But I always did have these characters, and the heart of it is actually why Pax has gone to war. And I think the interesting thing about that was kind of a random discovery on my part, is that war dogs during World War II were not bred for it as they are now. They were pets. They were the farm dogs. They were people's companion dogs. And a call went out for their volunteering into the service by an organization called Dogs for Defense. And when I discovered this, that these dogs were actually people's pets that were volunteered, donated, I thought that is the story right there. I mean, how do you do something like that? How do I take, my terrier and say, okay, now you're my pet, get off the couch, you're going to war. And it was just a fascinating detail that really was the nugget of the story, the nugget of the idea of the story. Yeah. How do people do this, and then what happens afterwards?
Yeah, well, I was just listening to my terriers barking downstairs. I'm thinking, wonder when the next war is. No, just kidding.
Yeah, no, I've thought about it myself with mine. Like, hey, come on.
Yeah, they always wait till the inopportune time to start barking too.
Yes, they do.
That's fascinating. So how does the characters in the book, how do they make that decision? Do they view it as a patriotic type thing to do? Or, I couldn't imagine that in today's society.
Yes, I think that's exactly it. In today's society, we can't imagine it. We don't even call ourselves owners, much less masters anymore. We are pet parents. But during the period of World War II, I think the thing that we have to keep in mind is that the war effort, and I always picture that in capital letters, was so critical. And people were just sacrificing right and left, and they really did want to help in any way that they could. And that, went from, women going into the workforce to collecting tin cans, to saving grease, to, everything. They didn't have much. They were on rations, ration stamps, and had, you used up your gas allotment. You didn't get any more gas. You had to wait. And I think that we don't really understand sacrifice in this culture now. But to answer your question, it was I'm sitting here looking at it from, 21st century eyes, and I'm putting myself in the place of two people. First of all, Francesca has sent her husband to war, and now she thinks she's got to send her dog, and it's extremely difficult for her, and she, really struggles with the idea. But at the end of it, her husband, who is in the middle of the conflict, says, this is the right thing to do, and they do it. And, the good news for the dogs that were volunteered is if they survived, they went home. Just like veterans, they went home to their families if they wanted them back.
Exactly. We're in today's situation where they're not sort of volunteered, they're bred into it, like you'd mentioned, or trained into it. They don't always come back.
They don't. I know. And it's just a different... they were sending all kinds of dogs. It's really kind of a fun bit of history when this call went out. And it was actually some women, a woman, and I can't remember her name now, I don't have my notes in front of me, who called up a reporter, I think it was, and she said, the dog fancy has to get into this conflict. And that's what they called it, the dog fancy. And she was a poodle breeder. And she said, we must do something. And they came up with this idea that the military didn't buy into it. And finally, they were convinced, the military was convinced to take on a couple of hundred dogs and see what happened. And of course, they were wonderfully successful. So the call goes out, and thousands of dogs are sent to war. Not all of them made the cut. A lot of them got sent home. And they eventually were a little bit more selective, and they wanted certain types of dogs as opposed to everybody's mutt. But it was quite an event and quite an effort, and I just found it incredibly fascinating.
Yeah, definitely fascinating. So you're talking about the idea, the initial idea and concept, the characters, et cetera, that you had for the book. Mm-hmm. How do you, as a writer, as a novelist, go about doing your research on this? How do you determine, okay, what do I really need to do to make this authentic as possible?
In this particular case, I was really lucky to, God bless the internet, you Google things, which is how I found out about the Dogs for Defense in the first place. But there was a book written by a man probably in 1954, so it's a very old book. I was not able to actually get a physical copy of it for myself. I did get one through the Boston Library, and I read every word, and he went through every detail of how that had happened. But I did get hold of the actual Army war manual that covered war dogs.
Wow.
And I mean, that was a trip. That was wonderful. So I was actually able to read down all of their specifications for equipment and handling and training and all this other stuff. So I had what we call research rapture. I suddenly knew all this stuff, and so I put it in the book, and my editor said, I think there's a little too much of this in there. So I had to pull a lot of it out, and okay, well, so you don't have to know every single detail about how high they can jump, but, it was great. It really was. And a third book that I encountered was a photographic, really a pictorial essay on all of the equipment and the dogs, and it had some wonderful photographs, and it was just a real treat. So I had a lot of fun digging around and all that.
Yeah, and I think it's important. I think that, I know from a novice standpoint, as a novice writer or someone who hasn't published their first novel, it's hard enough to come up with the idea and the concept, let alone doing the research and making sure you're accurate. Because if you're not, wouldn't you say that people will call you on it?
Oh, yes, they will. And that makes me very nervous. And I will say, in all honesty, that most of the time I go into research kind of backward. I write the story, and then I go and I hope that I'm right, and then I start doing the research to either substantiate what I've thought or corroborate it or correct it. But I tend to want to write sort of organically and not get too bogged down in the research normally. Now, in this particular case, the research kind of was just right there for me, and it was just great. So it went along simultaneously for once. For once, I actually did it the right way.
Well, you obviously are doing it the right way, period, because you've had great deal of success, obviously. So big kudos on that. But I think it's very valid what you were just saying. Write it and then go back and make sure you're tidying it down, you're tying the bows on it, et cetera, because that's sort of the way with writing in general. You shouldn't be, in my opinion, and from what I've heard from others, is don't get too caught up on the misspellings and the editing and all that while you're writing it. Once you've got it in place, or at least
struggle over those commas.
Exactly. Yeah. And it makes it hard, if you're doing it on a Word document or something like that, and you see your spell check pop up every 3 seconds like mine does.
Yeah,
that's
you try not to see that. That's actually distracting. It really is. But on the other hand, sometimes it's kind of good. You see that word and you say, no, I think that's right. I think spell check is wrong. And then you go to the dictionary and you find another word and you think, oh, I want to use that one. So, it's a two-edged sword. Sometimes you do need to sort of stop and assess. But for the most part, I think it's nice to get the story down on the pages and then go back and make your changes and fixes and all of that. And frankly, that's my favorite part. I mean, the hard part is getting the story down. The fun part is going back and editing it and cleaning it up and sculpting it into something readable and enjoyable.
There you go. All right. Okay, well, we're going to take a quick little commercial break here, but we're going to come back and talk to Susan Wilson a little bit more about her latest book, A Man of His Own, and talk to her about some of the other writing and how she puts all this great stuff down on paper. So everybody just hang tight. We're going to come right back after these messages. You're listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio.
Sit. Stay. We'll be right back after a short pause. Well, 4 to be exact.
Swipe It's a revolutionary new product that literally wipes away cat hair from virtually any surface. Most of us struggle with a roller or vacuum cleaner to clean up cat hair, but anyone who has tried either of these knows they just don't work very well. But Swipe It's patent-pending glove has a magnetic-like quality that removes cat hair from almost everything. And best of all, Swipe It's is machine washable, so you can use it over and over again. To order, just visit swipeits.com. That's SWIPETS. A simple solution for shedding.
Hi, this is Tim Link, animal communicator and pet expert and host of Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Have you ever wanted to know what your pet is really thinking? Do you want to find out if they truly understand what you're trying to tell them? Ever wish you could build a better understanding and closer relationship with your pet? Well, now you can. Learning to Communicate with Animals is a 4-part on-demand workshop. In the workshop, you'll learn the essential techniques that are necessary to communicate with animals, including what is animal communication, breathing correctly to achieve the perfect state to communicate with your animals at a deeper level, using guided meditation exercises and method to communicate with animals, and how to send and receive information from your animals. So if you're wanting to learn how to communicate and connect with your animals at a deeper level, visit PetLifeRadio.com/workshop and purchase and download Learning to Communicate with Animals. You'll be glad you did.
Coast to coast and around the world, it's Oh Behave with Arden Moore. Find out why cats and dogs do the things they do and get the latest buzz from wagging tongues and tails in Rin Tin Tinseltown. From famous pet experts and best-selling authors to television and movie stars, you'll get great tail-wagging pet tips and have a fur-flying fun time. Oh Behave with America's pet edutainer, Arden Moore. Every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. This is your host, Tim Link, and I'm here with Susan Wilson, talking to her about her latest book, A Man of His Own. Now, Susan, we talked a little bit before break about how to put together the book, the storyline, these type of things. Can you share with us a little bit about the challenges of putting together this book, especially since the success of some of the other novels that you put together?
This is a book that really struggled in some ways because I knew sort of what I wanted to do, and I actually started off with a book that looked like it was going to be a retrospective of a man who is an elderly man on the floor waiting for either rescue or death, and his retrospective of his life. And I piled through quite a number of pages of that, and I had a whole host of characters and all, and it just wasn't quite working. I mean, I knew he wanted to be, he would be a dog handler in World War II, and he'd have this, this memory of this dog, but it just wasn't catching. And so that was one of the challenges, was sometimes even though you fall in love with your words, the story's not there. And that kind of was where we were. It was just not working as too much retrospective. And the characters were not building. And so I stopped and I thought, you know what, we gotta do something else. And it sounds a little trite, but the Rick Stanton character was going to be an extremely minor character. He was actually possibly going to already be dead at the beginning of this book. And then he took on a life, and he's the one who found the dog. And it was just one of those strange writerly happenstances where you're working with you're kind of barking up the wrong tree, and when you turn around, there's the real one. And that's kind of how the challenge was, to actually abandon a good chunk of book and just start all over again. And once I did that, once I recognized that the actual character who needed the most attention was a minor character, it flew. I did it in about 3 months after having worked on it for about a year.
Wow, so you worked on it for about a year, but it took 3 months once it took hold just to get it done, because you had the right piece.
Turn it around and say, rip that out, throw that away, get rid of this character, change this character's name entirely so that I've got a new vision of him, and go from there. And it worked.
Wow, very nice, very fascinating. So, as a New York Times bestselling author, you've had great success with your previous novels, One Good Dog and The Dog Who Danced. How do you build on that success? How do you take that and keep that momentum going?
You pray a lot. You hope it. No, in all seriousness, I mean, it is a momentum, and I think any false step I make is going to lose the momentum. But I think it's building a fan base, to be kind of blunt about readership. And I feel exceedingly blessed to have met, through contacts through the website and through Facebook and all of that, a host of people who really love the idea of these stories, and I'm just hoping that they remain faithful to me and continue to enjoy it, or let me know if I'm not doing a good job. I mean, that's okay too. Let me know if I'm not sustaining that kind of momentum. But it's a wonderful thing. I mean, it happened by chance that I've found this genre, and I'm loving it, and it's a lot of fun. And I'm, like I said, I really do appreciate the steadfast loyalty of many, many, many readers who are usually, typically dog lovers. I will say that's the largest group that I know of, but also people who just enjoy a good yarn, as a friend of mine used to say.
There you go. That makes sense. And you do a great job with that.
Well, thank you.
So tell us about, you mentioned your terrier. You got to give us names and examples.
My terrier
friends around.
Yes, she is we don't really know what she is. She looks like a giant Jack Russell or a miniature wolfhound. We can't just quite decide what she is. She's a white and black terrier hound mix, probably. That I can't say I rescued her because she had never suffered. She was born in the shelter and then shipped up from down south to a local shelter, and she was available, and it's been going on it's 11 years now that we've had her. So she's rules the roost, absolutely rules the roost.
There you go.
So.
Does she try to be your muse, or does she force you to get away from the computer every once in a while to get outside?
She does. She has an inner clock that is wound tight. And I will go up to my desk at a certain hour with my coffee, and she has a bed in my office, and she goes right to bed. And I can work. I can go back up and down, get more coffee, whatever. She just stays in the bed. And then at 11 o'clock, she gets up, and she goes over to me, and she sits there, and she does that, nose down, eyes up thing, where she just stares at me. And if I don't pay any of her attention, her nose goes under the elbow, and she flips my arm. And if I don't pay any attention, she starts butting me with her paws. She just says, "It's time. It's time for the walk." And so okay, I'll go. And we do our mile and a half or whatever it is.
There you go.
She's funny. I mean, it's like, okay, it must be 11. Bonnie's sitting there staring at me.
11 o'clock around the dot. So it gets her exercise, but it also gets you up and gives you a little mental break as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's sometimes it's the best part of my day, although today it was raining, but we did it anyway.
That's right. Rain or shine, we had monsoons down here in South today, so it was not a pleasurable day, especially when you got two schnauzers who really prefer not to be in the rain. So it was a challenge.
Yeah. Schnauzers are great.
Hey,
I have a friend who has a little schnauzer. Just got a schnauzer puppy to go with the other one she has, so they're great little dogs.
Oh, boy. Well, there's a lot of sleepless hours right there for sure. Oh, goodness. Well, Susan, once everybody picks up a copy of A Man of His Own, once they read through it and everything, what do you hope they walk away with?
I would say, I hope that they walk away satisfied. We close shut the book and say, that was a good story. I related to those people, or I at least believed that they existed, and also maybe think a little bit about how, the sacrifices of our forefathers, so to speak, during that conflict and on through current day. These men and women and dogs have just, sacrificed and have their lives completely changed by conflict.
Yeah, you did a great job with the book. Building the characters, relatable to the characters. Got a dog in there as a main theme, which is always a win-win for me. And the historical nature behind it, and the actual facts and everything behind it. So it's a learning lesson as well as an enjoyable read. So great job, Susan.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. So how can people find out more about you and what you have going on, and where can they get the book?
Well, they can get the book in the usual large outlets that you can connect to on your computer or otherwise, Barnes & Noble being one and Amazon the other. Also, hopefully, local independent bookstores, which I'm a great fan, so I recommend always trying them first. And all else fails, the library is always a good place.
Yes. Everybody pick up a copy of the book, A Man of His Own. Follow Susan Wilson, everything going on there. And as you mentioned before, I'm assuming you're on Facebook and all the wonderful sites.
I'm on Facebook. Yeah, Susan Wilson Author, I think, is how you have to find it. Or I think if you just, I don't know, I've never done it. And I also do have a website, which is SusanWilsonWrites.com.
Okay, everybody, great. So check out SusanWilsonWrites.com or go to Susan Wilson Author on Facebook. Pick up a copy, go to your local stores, go to your independents, order it online. You guys are going to be really satisfied. Another great job, Susan. The book's called A Man of His Own, a wonderful novel, and it was a pleasure talking to you.
Oh, it's always a pleasure talking with you, Tim.
That's great. All right, well, we're going to come up to the end of the show here tonight, but I thank everyone for listening to Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. I want to send a big special thank you to our sponsors and producers for making this show possible. To find out more about me, Tim Link, and the other guests I've interviewed on the Animal Rights Show, you can go to Pet Life Radio. It's PetLifeRadio.com, and you can download the episodes and listen to all the wonderful interviews. And while you're there, check out the other wonderful hosts and shows on Pet Life Radio. It's PetLifeRadio.com. If you have any questions for me, comments, or ideas for the show, you can send me an email. You can send me an email at tim@PetLifeRadio.com. It's tim@PetLifeRadio.com, and I'll be glad to answer your questions, entertain your comments, and bring on the people you want to hear from the most. So until next time, write a great story about the animals in your life, share it in a blog, article, or in a book, and who knows, you may be the next guest on Animal Rights on Pet Life Radio. Have a great day.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.